Who were the Laestrygonians, the Odyssey's most terrifying giants? Warning: this video contains spoilers for Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, along with discussion of Greek mythology and one of the most terrifying creatures Odysseus ever encountered. If you're avoiding spoilers, this is your warning. Now let's explain. Imagine surviving a 10-year war, escaping the legendary city of Troy, finally setting sail toward home after years of fighting. You believe the worst is over. Then your ships enter what looks like a peaceful harbor. Towering cliffs surround the water. The sea becomes perfectly still. Everything appears calm. But hidden beyond those cliffs waits an entire race of giant cannibals. Within moments, enormous boulders begin crashing down from the sky. Ships shatter into pieces. Sailors are crushed before they can even defend themselves. Those who survive the attack face something even more horrifying. The giants begin grabbing men with their bare hands and carrying them away as food. This wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. Among all the monsters Odysseus faced during his journey home, many fans remember the Cyclops. Others think of Scylla or Charybdis. But few encounters were as devastating as the attack by the Laestrygonians. In just a single day, Odysseus lost almost his entire fleet. So, who exactly were the Laestrygonians? Were they monsters? Were they humans? Or were they something even more terrifying? Let's explain. Who were the Laestrygonians? The Lestrygonians were a legendary race of gigantic people described in Homer's Odyssey. Unlike mythical creatures such as the Cyclops or the Sirens, the Lestrygonians lived together as an entire civilization. They had cities, kings, families, and a functioning society. But they shared one horrifying characteristic. They hunted and ate human beings. That single detail made them one of the most feared races in all of Greek mythology. Unlike many monsters that attacked travelers out of instinct or anger, the Lestrygonians viewed sailors as prey. For them, humans weren't visitors. They were food. That distinction makes their encounter with Odysseus especially disturbing. Where did they live? According to Homer, the Lestrygonians lived in a land called Telos. The name roughly means the far gates. Odysseus and his crew arrived after wandering the seas for many days. At first glance, Telos looked beautiful. The harbor appeared calm. Towering cliffs protected it from storms. Fresh water flowed nearby. Everything suggested it was the perfect place to rest and gather supplies. But appearances can be dangerously misleading. The entrance to the harbor was extremely narrow. Once the Greek ships sailed inside, they had almost no room to escape. Without realizing it, Odysseus's men had entered a natural trap. Even today, many scholars believe Homer intentionally described the harbor this way to symbolize false security. Sometimes the safest-looking places hide the greatest dangers. The first warning. Before entering the city, Odysseus sent several crew members to investigate. The explorers soon encountered a young woman drawing water. She appeared friendly. When they asked where the local king lived, she pointed them toward a nearby palace. Nothing seemed unusual. The sailors believed they had finally reached a peaceful kingdom. But once they entered the palace, everything changed. Instead of finding ordinary rulers, they discovered beings far larger than any human. The queen herself was described as enormous. Moments later, King Antiphates appeared. The king immediately seized one of Odysseus's men and devoured him on the spot. The remaining sailors fled in terror. Unfortunately, it was already too late. The attack that destroyed the fleet. King Antiphates raised the alarm. Almost instantly, countless Laestrygonians rushed toward the harbor. But they didn't attack with swords. They attacked with the landscape itself. Standing high above the cliffs, the giants began hurling massive rocks into the trapped fleet. Each boulder smashed through wooden ships as though they were toys. Masts snapped. Hulls split apart. Entire crews disappeared beneath the waves. Those who managed to swim toward shore faced an even worse fate. The giants grabbed them with enormous hands and carried them away like hunters returning with freshly caught animals. Homer describes the scene with shocking brutality. Within minutes, nearly every ship was destroyed. For Odysseus, this wasn't simply another setback. It was one of the greatest disasters of his entire journey. How did Odysseus escape? Unlike the rest of the fleet, Odysseus made one crucial decision. Instead of anchoring inside the harbor with the other ships, he tied his own vessel outside the narrow entrance. At the time, it probably seemed like simple caution, but that decision saved his life. As the giants attacked, Odysseus immediately cut the ropes, securing his ship. His crew rowed desperately away from the harbor before the Laestrygonians could reach them. Out of 12 ships that had left Troy, only one survived. The rest were completely destroyed. That single escape changed everything. From that point onward, Odysseus continued his journey with only a fraction of the companions who had begun the voyage. Were the Laestrygonians stronger than the Cyclops? Fans often compare the Laestrygonians to Polyphemus, the famous Cyclops. Both were gigantic. Both were cannibals. Both threatened Odysseus's crew. But there is one enormous difference. Odysseus defeated Polyphemus through intelligence. He escaped the Cyclops' cave using strategy and patience. The Lestrygonians offered no such opportunity. There wasn't one giant. There were hundreds, possibly thousands. Instead of facing a single enemy, Odysseus encountered an entire civilization capable of overwhelming any army that entered its territory. That makes the Lestrygonians arguably even more dangerous than the Cyclops. What did they represent? Many mythology scholars believe the Lestrygonians symbolize humanity's fear of the unknown. Ancient sailors often traveled into waters no Greek had ever explored. Every unfamiliar coastline carried uncertainty. A welcoming harbor could become a deadly trap. Friendly strangers could suddenly become enemies. The Laestrygonian episode reminds audiences that not every danger announces itself. Sometimes the greatest threats hide behind peaceful appearances. It's one of the recurring themes throughout the Odyssey. Strength alone cannot guarantee survival. Wisdom, caution, and good judgment matter just as much. The Laestrygonians in Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. Christopher Nolan's adaptation brings these legendary giants to life on the big screen using modern visual effects, while staying remarkably faithful to Homer's original story. Rather than portraying them as mindless monsters, the film presents them as an organized society whose terrifying way of life has remained unchanged for generations. The harbor sequence becomes one of the film's most suspenseful moments. The towering cliffs, the sudden rain of enormous boulders, the desperate attempt to escape, and the shocking destruction of almost Odysseus's entire fleet all capture the scale of one of mythology's greatest disasters. The sequence also reminds viewers that not every challenge on Odysseus's journey can be solved through bravery. Sometimes survival depends on a single decision made before the danger even begins. So, who were the Laestrygonians? They were a race of giant cannibals whose peaceful-looking kingdom concealed one of the deadliest traps in Greek mythology. Their attack destroyed nearly all of Odysseus's fleet, leaving him with only one surviving ship and forever changing the course of his journey home. Unlike many monsters in the Odyssey, the Laestrygonians weren't simply obstacles to overcome. They represented the terrifying reality that some dangers cannot be defeated. They can only be escaped. What do you think? Were the Laestrygonians even more terrifying than the Cyclops? Or do you believe another monster from the Odyssey posed an even greater threat to Odysseus? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more The Odyssey explainers, Greek mythology stories, movie breakdowns, and hidden details. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.